Is Tesla's full self-driving feature worth it? It's currently going for about $6,000. It's going to be continuing to go up, at least per Elon Musk. I personally don't get it, but Eli Burton of My Tesla Adventures is going to be here to explain, because he loves his full self-driving feature on his current car, on his previous car. I only had Autopilot 1.0 on mine, and I was still kind of iffy on this. And for those of you who are either thinking about upgrading or thinking about buying a car and thinking, well, should I really get it? Well, this probably is a great video for you to watch, because we're going to talk about the history, we're going to talk about what's happening right now, and what to expect in the near future as a version 10 coming to the market. All of this is coming up next.
Taking over the world, electrifying the world, E4 Electric!
Welcome to E4 Electric, your number one source of unbiased electric car news. If this is your first time here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button down there so you don't miss anything moving forward. All right, so Eli is going to be here just 1 second. And, you know, my personal experience is kind of weird. I didn't really miss my Autopilot until I didn't have it, and because I drive a Volt now, and I miss it a little bit. But I think I missed it the most when the very first update went through and we had to start keeping our hands on the wheel. For those of you who don't remember or didn't have a Tesla at that time, originally we didn't have to keep our hands on the wheel, and until it wasn't until a few people wiped out and a couple of people died that Tesla kind of and this is a self sort of inflicted regulation. I don't think this is a regulation from DMV or any type of a government regulation. So and until this day, you kind of have to keep your hands on the wheel, which a lot of people, including myself, saying, what's the point of Autopilot? All right, so, but Eli's going to be here. He's going to break it down, explain. Before that, of course, a quick reminder that this video and this channel is sponsored by Byton. Check out their all-electric SUV called M-Byte. The reservations are open now. Over 50,000 of people have made one. The car starts at about $45,000, and that's before the incentives. It's coming to the US. It's coming to Europe in the next year or so. So go to the description of this video to reserve your Byton today. All right, so without further ado, let's bring Eli here so he can shine some light on this really, at this point, amazing technology. Eli, how you doing, my friend?
Alex, I'm doing well, man. I'm super excited to be here and talk about Autopilot, especially because Autopilot is the first thing that got me sold on why I needed a Tesla.
Very interesting. Well, I didn't have that opportunity because when I was buying mine, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. But all right, so let's go over the little history, and by little, I mean long history of what full self-driving is right now. The only other self-driving option is, I believe, Autopilot, and it's included in Model 3s, and I'm not really even sure if it's Model S or Model X. So why don't you walk us through the memory lane here of how it started and what are the options out there right now for those who are basically buying Teslas at this point?
So in more recent history, we're going to be talking about Autopilot 2.0. There were some people like yourself that were very early adopters that got to experience Autopilot 1.0, got to experience Autopilot 1.0 when there were so few Tesla cars that they were able to give it to people without any sort of reinforcement safety feature that required people to have hands on their wheel. Ultimately, too many people were doing silly things, putting their dog in the driver's seat and putting videos on YouTube. So ultimately, before safety regulators forced it upon Tesla and anybody going down autonomy, Tesla self-regulated and started requiring people to put their hands on the wheel. I don't know exactly what year it made that transition. Do you remember, Alex?
You know, I think it was it was a while back. I think 2015, I believe, around that time.
Okay, so since 2015, you've had to put your hands on the wheel. Fast forward about a year and a half later, and we have the introduction of Autopilot 2.0. So on the initial rollout of Autopilot, there was a couple segments of the features that Tesla was selling. There was the standard Autopilot, which basically would do there's one of the pieces of Autopilot is where the adaptive cruise control. So the basic bit of Autopilot was just adaptive cruise control. It would keep space between you and other vehicles, but it wasn't controlling the wheel. And then there was an upgrade feature called Enhanced Autopilot. And as I recall, Enhanced Autopilot was about $6,000 if you bought it with the car, and it was an extra $1,000 if you bought it after. And it was expected that the price was going to go up over time. And then there was this added feature set, which at the time when I bought the car was 5,000. And what it was is full self-driving. Now, full self-driving, if you bought that feature back in 2017, or even if you buy the feature so far today, it is just investing in and pre-ordering future functionality that Tesla has not yet made and has not yet, although they're getting closer now, has not yet delivered on.
Okay, so and I think so. Let's also go back just a little bit and just in case people don't know that the big difference between 1.0 and 2.0 and moving forward is that originally this company Mobileye was designing this. For Tesla, they're actually now owned by Intel, and they had a Tesla and Elon Musk and the company Mobileye. They had an issue where Mobileye was saying how Elon was pushing them too hard. They weren't comfortable coming up with those features, so they ended up breaking up, and Tesla ended up saying, okay, we're just going to do everything in-house. In the beginning, the set of features have gone down. So if you had a 2.0, you had way less features than if you had 1.0. And that went on for about 2 years or so. There's actually a lawsuit that Tesla ended up settling, I believe, for I think $5 million. People claiming we bought stuff and you didn't deliver. Okay, so
yeah, the split from Mobileye was a really big deal, and the difference from 1.0 to 2.0. I think Tesla had intended to go all the way with Mobileye, and when they first came out with Autopilot 1.0, guys, Tesla was years ahead of everybody else. They were the first level 2 self-driving accessible to a consumer, and they were the only one for a few years. And where they were at that time with how few of cameras that system was using, like there was no side cameras like the system has now. It was like this one forward-facing camera system that was really doing everything. What was accomplished back then with that hardware was absolutely incredible. And then, yeah, you're right. Basically, Elon decided to split with Mobileye because Mobileye wasn't willing to push the technology as far as Tesla wanted to go. And they decided, you know what, we're going to do this in-house. But what that meant is it took them years to even get back to where they were previously.
Right, and so they finally got there, but those are the 2 years that I've owned my last 2 Teslas, where I was like, hey, I feel like if I would have bought a new one with a 2.0, I would have made a huge step backwards. I already thought we made a huge step backwards, where you had to keep your eyes on the wheel, and I would have not bought the Autopilot package if I knew that was going to be a rollout. That I would be completely out. So like right now, if I was to buy a Tesla, I wouldn't get an Autopilot, and let's also talk about the name, right? So a lot of people, granted that Autopilot comes from the aviation, where it does not completely control the plane, but most people associate it with the completely hands-off, I can take a nap kind of a driving, which it is not. It's more of an assistant, at this point. What are your thoughts?
A very powerful assistant.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It is an assistant.
What are your thoughts about the Autopilot name in terms of like, okay, me and you get it, but some people just buy a car that someone says Autopilot and they go like, oh, self-driving, great, and they get in trouble. What are your thoughts? Do you think Tesla maybe could have gone with a different name?
I don't think they should have gone with a different name. In fact, the other automakers are now kind of copying Tesla, and Nissan has named their, driver assist feature very similar to Autopilot. And here's the thing. It sounds like one of those things, if you put a nice story together that like, oh, Tesla's selling it as Autopilot and all these accidents are happening because people are just assuming it's a self-driving system. The thing is, the accident data doesn't indicate that. People who are actually, the general public may not understand, but what the data is showing us is that people who own these cars do. Because if you actually had a bunch of people not understanding this and treating it like a full self-driving system, we would have a much higher accident rate in Teslas because it is not a fully autonomous system today. So yeah, from the general public, and they run stories about this, they will poll just the average person who doesn't really know a lot about Tesla, doesn't know much about electric cars, hasn't experienced Autopilot, and ask them what they think. But their opinion is irrelevant. What's relevant is what's the opinion and what's the understanding of people who actually get behind the wheel of these vehicles. And I'll tell you what, the other thing is too, and this is something a lot of people aren't considering, a lot of coverage isn't considering. At a minimum, this is a $35,000 car before tax. The average purchase price on a Model 3 is $50,000. Model S's are going all the way up over $100,000. People aren't spending $50,000, $100,000 on a car and being careless, right? Like this is a very prized asset. Like none of the data indicates that people are actually not ultimately understanding how this works and resulting in much higher accidents. And it's a prized asset that people are buying, and they're treating it as one. Yeah,
no. So here's the thing. I totally agree, and I guess my only problem with the name is the name. It's not actually, I don't think people are misusing it. I don't think people are getting in cars and just, saying, okay, it's just going to fly on its own. But I think that, just like with any corporation, I would have a problem with misleading advertisement. I kind of consider Autopilot as a misleading advertisement. As much as I agree with you that the drivers.
I think maybe before it was Mora, but when you look at it now with Navigate on Autopilot, when I can get on the freeway, activate Autopilot, and not disengage it all the way to my destination, and that involves lane changes and freeway merges, and it will actually change freeways for me. I mean, that's an autopilot that's an autopilot feature. The car is automatically piloting itself across lanes, in between, across freeways, and I only have to take back over when it exits when I'm 100 feet down the off ramp. So I would say, yeah, maybe there are points in the past where it was less of an autopilot feature, especially when it was just lane keeping. But now that it has the ability to auto lane change and based upon my navigation, and also too, when cars in front of me are going well below my set speed, if it assesses that the lane next to me is going faster, when it turns on the blinker, moves over, turns the blinker back off, and then keeps the distance that I've set. I mean, man, this is definitely autopilot. Now, granted, a year and a half ago when it was kind of driving like an 18-year-old with their first car and would do some weird stuff in the lanes and lane changes were jerky as heck. Yeah, I mean, maybe then it wasn't fair to call it autopilot, but Tesla gave it a name knowing where they were going. And I think in the early days, I think they took the hit of some of the criticism. But when you look at it now, I don't think the name is at all unwarranted.
Well, so I guess that's my point, is that when they gave this name to the Autopilot, I believe 2014 or even 13, there was definitely not an Autopilot. And then that
the first name to airplanes with Autopilot. There's been several layers of airplane autopilot systems, right? The very first autopilot systems were very rudimentary and really didn't take over all that much. And now we're to the point that pilots pretty much just do takeoff and landing, but it's always been called this autopilot system. Now they had numbers and they had layers, right? But I mean, they've called it that since the beginning.
I gotta tell you, I'm not a big fan of sort of when people give that example, because I think, pilots are very much trained professionals where none of us are professionals at driving our cars. So I think that's a little different. But okay, but what about full self-driving? This thing that they're selling right now is full self-driving package, and it is not a full self-driving car. What are your thoughts on that? Is this another kind of a misleading a name for the feature, as great as it is?
Well, I think full self-driving is where they're actually being most transparent, because it says that you're buying something that doesn't yet exist today. You are investing in future features that do not exist. I think that's very transparent, that when you pay for full self-driving today, there's no feature you're actually getting today that is part of the full self-driving feature set. Now they're in the late stages of the testing. I've heard that I saw in Kim's video, they're on version 4 of the advanced beta on the advanced summon. So what's understood is in the next, it sounds like 6 to 8 weeks now, they had some corner cases that caused a delay. This will actually be the rollout of the first feature that will be specific to those who bought full self-driving. But anybody in the past who's bought it, there's been no feature that they've gained that people with either an enhanced autopilot when you bought for it separate, or now that enhanced autopilot is now just standard as autopilot, that they have. But no, Tesla's very much communicated that full self-driving, you're buying a future feature suite that doesn't exist. And it looks like we're a month or two away from the very first feature of the full self-driving suite being introduced. And I would say Enhanced Summon definitely categorizes as a full self-driving feature. And you've seen the videos that Kim, like Tesla Kim and some of the others have put up. And when you have the ability to stand 200 feet away from the vehicle, across the parking lot, in front of the store or restaurant, and hit summon, and the car backs itself out of its parking spot, navigates through the parking lot to you without a human in the vehicle, that's a full self-driving feature.
No, I agree. And I think this is one of the best showcases of the modern technology of autonomy. So I love that. I can't wait for people do that and just blow other people's minds, All right. So, I mean, I would still say that naming could be better, but I guess out of all the things that I've had problems with, this is definitely on the bottom of my priority list. Now, let's talk about pricing. And tell us what this structure is. So Autopilot is built in all pricing for all models. It used to be $2,000, and you can still get it without an Autopilot off menu, I guess, and that will give you an extra $2,000 back. But the current full self-driving is at, tell us what it is. I think it's $6,000, and how much it is to upgrade if you already have a car, didn't pay for the full self-driving originally, and now want to upgrade? What's the pricing there?
So if you're buying a car new today, it's $6,000 for full self-driving. Now, if you had a car previously, there's a number of prices it could be. So basically what they did is if you bought a Tesla since Autopilot was standard, also like they baked it into the price. And when they baked it into the price, they didn't raise the price of the vehicle. So they basically made Autopilot free when it used to be a $6,000, $5,000 upgrade, depending when you bought. If you bought when Autopilot already came standard, full self-driving is $6,000. However, as a result of some exchanges on Twitter from people who had bought in the earlier days when enhanced Autopilot cost $6,000, those people are actually being given a discount to upgrade to full self-driving because they've already paid so much towards the feature set already. So for those people, the upgrade cost is $3,000. But if you're buying a vehicle new today, it's currently $6,000 for the full self-driving feature. What they're doing, what Tesla said is originally they were actually planning on raising the price an extra $1,000 to $7 just here last week. But one of the other things that Elon said is they're going to raise the price as they continue to deliver the feature set. And we just got an update from Elon on Twitter earlier this past week is that it's going to be another, I think 6 to 8 weeks roughly. I don't think he was specific, but it sounded like another month or so before they're going to raise the price because they need a bit longer on this enhanced summon feature. And that once that enhanced summon feature is basically ready to roll out, they're going to raise the price of full self-driving. Now, if they're going to raise the price of full self-driving going forward, I think that's a smart move. If you're going to convince people why they need to buy a full self-driving today and not later, there needs to be incremental improvements to the functionality to justify the cost.
Well, and I guess this is where I have a problem. I understand that it's essentially pre-sale, but when you're buying a book or washing machine or even a phone, you kind of know how much when it's coming. And usually you don't have to pay until a lot of times when you get it, but let's say you pay up front. The timeline and the features which you're getting are very much set in stone, where here you kind of buy, a lot of people bought the full self-driving, and didn't get any of those features by the time their lease was over. So because it's so blurry, go ahead.
I was one of them. I actually bought full self-driving on my original 75D. And I actually did get a segment of that settlement that Tesla paid. I didn't get a large portion of it because I didn't buy my car in 2016. I bought mine in 2017, but I actually got a portion of the settlement amount.
Congratulations on suing Tesla successfully, Eli.
I was part of the class action.
Right.
I would say I was a part of it was part of the class action lawsuit. When for people who don't know, when a class action lawsuit is settled, everybody the class action is filed upon without even doing anything. You get a check in the mail for your chunk of the money. So yeah, I got a small check in the mail for that. But yeah, I bought it, and I bought it at the time, and I really didn't know what the timeline on it was going to be. But I bought it because I knew that whenever it did get here, I want it on day zero. I want to be one of the first people to have it, so I can go off and show it to the world, and so I could just personally experience it because I'm obsessed with this. So, but you highlighted something that's right. Normally, when you're pre-buying technology, they have a good idea and a very concrete roadmap of how long it's going to take. In this case, we're pre-buying a feature that is based upon very cutting-edge AI and the development of a tech that Tesla doesn't have. Very few organizations are even working on. I mean, we're talking the very cutting edge of what the software industry is doing. And what part of that is some of these things they have no idea how long some of these things are going to take. And some of these things, they have an idea going in, and then they get in and they start running into all sorts of challenges that the neural net struggled more than they could predict. So we're buying into something that's so far on the cutting edge that it doesn't have that standard roadmap. And if you're going to buy this, you need to take the timelines that Tesla and Elon is saying with a grain of salt. And I don't mean it's because they don't believe in them. It's because when you're developing technology this advanced and has never been done before, issues are going to come up that cause it delays. Like, earlier in May, Elon really believed that he was going to be able to deliver this thing in August, if not earlier, for enhanced summon. And we've seen some of his recent comments, and there's a number of corner cases that are continuing to give struggles to the neural net, that they're fine 99% of the time, but the other 1% of the time they're curbing people's rims, and they can't allow that. So they've got this very small problem that's taking them an extra 6 to 8 weeks to solve. And that's the level of challenge you're dealing with when you're dealing with an autonomous, neural net AI driven system. So if you're going to buy this, you're going to understand what you're getting into, and that you're going to need some patience.
Well, it's hard to understand what you're getting into because, Elon promises stuff knowing himself. And like, for example, he promised that they're going to have pretty much the full self-driving figured out by the end of the year. It's just going to be a matter of regulations, right? But, I've watched those summon videos. They're still very not good. At least what I saw from 2 months ago. So if they can navigate a car in a parking lot, very controlled environment, in June, they're not gonna solve the entire self-driving, feature by the end of the year. Like.
So to be fair, what we're seeing them piloting with early testers, which is what they're willing to give the public and what they've got internally is very different. So we got to imagine that, like, Elon has even said that he's got a beta build where he's got a version of this software that he's already handling red light, stop signs, and intersections. Now it's not ready to be deployed to the public, let alone hand to public testers. But we don't really have a whole lot of insight to where they are with that and how much of that they're going to give. I don't think they will give much early beta. I don't think they can give early beta access to true the end-to-end stoplight, intersection, red light stuff until they get some amount of validation. That's crossing another entire legal line and regulatory line.
Right.
But
before we go on a tangent though, so my point is that, if I'm paying money for something and I'm leasing a car for 3 years, and at the end of that lease, I still didn't get it, I want my money back. And I'm probably not going back to the brand. Like, I understand that it's hard to work on stuff that's hard, right? I get that. But as a consumer, I don't care. If I pay for something, I want either the stuff or the money back. So that's.
And if you're looking at a 3-year lease, and I think at the time it was less clear, but I think it's more so clear now. If you're looking at a couple-year lease on one of these cars, and you're not going to be okay with if at the end of it you didn't get the feature, then it's best that you don't buy the full self-driving feature, to be honest. I think for a lot of people now, it doesn't make sense for them to buy it.
Absolutely.
For me,
It's a
especially
great
with this
advice.
new car that I got, because I'm keeping it. My plan is to keep my new car for 10 years. And I don't imagine any world Tesla doesn't deliver it in that time frame. I think there'll be many automakers who've done it. But I'm keeping my car. I own this car. It was a great investment for me because it doesn't matter for me if it takes 3 years for them to get it there, which I think it's going to be much sooner. There's no need for me to pay the price increases when my goal is to have the feature day one. But I think for a lot of people, buying full self-driving is not going to make sense.
Yeah, but listen, if they would have come out and said what you literally just said, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'll be like, okay, well, I wouldn't buy it and wouldn't recommend buying it, but I'll be like, okay, they're being honest about it. It's, but that's not how it appeared to a lot of people. And this is why the lawsuit had to be settled, right? Because Tesla couldn't prove that they were really that they were saying this and they were, presenting it that way. And I think this is why I struggle with, because
they deserve to lose that shareholder lawsuit because they were overly ambitious, and the gap between what they were saying they were going to deliver and what they delivered was so huge that was a lawsuit they had to settle and they had to pay out. Autopilot 2.0 barely didn't even catch up to 1.0 until last March. And it was only about 6-9 months ago with Navigate on Autopilot that it took a major step past it. So they deserve to settle that. Yeah. They were overly ambitious, and the gap between where they got and what they were promising to do didn't pan out.
So let's talk about, I know you love your Autopilot. I mean, I've driven with you in long distance too. You absolutely love the full self-driving. Tell us what are the features that you love, but at the same time, also tell me, do you think it's worth it, especially for people who are buying, let's say, $40,000, Model 3, and this, it's $6,000. That's about, 20% of the entire price. It's going up. Tell me, why do you think it's worth it? Why you gladly pay for it, and what are the features that you really enjoy?
If you're buying a car today, and why I think, for me, what Autopilot is so amazing is it completely, for me, takes the stress out of being on the road. Now, granted, there's situations that pop up that you've really got to take control and deal with when some idiot's coming at you from behind, not slowing down or whatever. There's still situations like that come up, but I can drive long distances, I can commute to work, and go on road trips through traffic in the Bay Area and LA. And it makes it such a less stressful experience because you have another set of sensors looking around the vehicle in all directions. You have the ability to keep the lanes, looking at when vehicles are going to be merging ahead into you. It's managing the space. So if you're in stop and go traffic, it'll do the stop and go. It completely changes the driving experience, especially on freeways, especially going through cities, especially in traffic.
I hope this video helps people decide and educate them a little bit in the history. This is one of my problems with Tesla, generally speaking, because I think even though they're doing great things, they don't do a good job in terms of communicating that to customers and future customers, and I think they can get better at it. But I'm glad we talked about it. I'm sure we'll have a few other conversations in the next few months once those cool, really amazing features come out.
Yeah, I can't wait till Enhanced Autopilot is public and been deployed. And I think that we'll see how that impacts people's lives and how that changes this conversation.
Cool. Well, before we go, remind people where they can find you and listen to your podcast. What's next on your podcast?
Awesome. So yeah, you guys can find me. I'm most active on Instagram, instagram.com/myteslaadventure. I also have a YouTube channel here that I post on occasionally, the My Tesla Adventure YouTube channel. We have another Tesla Owners Club event. It's going to be coming up. It's going to be the 26th or 27th of October. It's going to be another meetup. We're going to do a drive, go have a private meal together somewhere along the coast in Northern California. So we're looking for the planning on that. Once that event is announced, which will be in the next week or so, we're going to announce it on our My Tesla Adventure Facebook page. That's where we promote and share all the events that we do for the Owners Club side of My Tesla Adventure. So really looking forward to that. And I know, Alex, you've come to some of our events, so I've got to make sure I can drag you along to this one.
You don't have to drag me along at all. I always willingly get in your car and autopilot my way in there. I mean, by the way, this is the first time I've heard you're planning another one in October. I'm definitely there because I've said it many times. Like your name of your club is perfect because every time I go, right, it is an adventure. Like it's not just, oh, we're just gonna drive around or just have dinner. It is really an experience and a memory that I make every time. I don't know how you do it, but it's amazing. So we'll definitely keep everybody updated, and the links are in the description of this video. Thanks so much for joining me again, and I will see you next week.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this was a longer discussion than I thought we were going to have because this is a complicated feature with a complicated history. So I'm glad we got it all out in front of you. Let us know if you have any questions. We might just do another video, kind of summarizing some of the other things. This thing is going to move pretty quickly for the full self-driving feature. And let me know in the comment section what your feelings are about, if you have one, if you decided not to get one, and if you think that it's worth it for you. So definitely let me know. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to our VIP list right here. It's free. We send a bonus story to you guys every Saturday, something that we weren't able to fit in our YouTube channel or our website, e4electric.com. So go to e4electric.com/VIP. That link is also in the description of this video. All right, looking forward to your comments. Other than that, see you next time, and remember to stay charged.